Welcome to Padula Rasa. I'm David Blank.
And I'm Jim Esch.
This is a podcast about finding something in nothing.
Welcome to Padula Rasa. I'm Jim, and I'm joined by Dave Blank. Dave, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Great. This is the end of April, and we're squeezing a podcast in. We're trying to do at least one a month. So this is episode 4. And we're going to mainly highlight Dave's trip to Italy. So you were in Italy for a while earlier in the month. So how did that trip go?
Oh, it was fantastic. It was really great. We were in Florence. We buzzed through Pisa really quickly and looked at the Leaning Tower. So we went to the Academy. We went to Rome. We were in Pompeii, Sorrento. We had a couple of really interesting experiences while we were there. Went to the island of Capri, which is where Julius Caesar, or I think, had like 12 villas on the island, one for each month. So but something adjacent to that, which I wanted to mention, which I don't think I mentioned to you earlier, was that I was, after I got back, I was talking to Mark Cristaldi,
who was on early episode of Padula Rasa, season 1.
Yep. And we discovered that 37 years ago, the last time I was in Italy, he was also in Italy at the same time. Although he was there for the whole semester, I was only there for 2 weeks, but we could have bumped into each other in Rome. How crazy would that have been?
Very cool.
You know? But it reminds me, kind of like when you and I were at that Camper Van Beethoven concert in 1988,
and didn't realize it.
Yeah, it had to be the same show, because I think at the Chestnut Cabaret.
That's right.
I'm pretty sure they were only there for one show, and I was there with a bunch of other people. We could have easily run into each other back then. It reminded me that even when you go someplace that you think you're the only, you think you're the only one there, but you're not. There's all these other people, and you probably know some of them. And in fact, when we were at Pisa, Leah got this stunned look on her face, and she couldn't talk for about a minute. And I finally got it out of her. She saw somebody from a camp that she goes to, but it wasn't somebody that she knows. She knows him, but I mean, she knew who he was. But I said, "Why didn't you say hello?" She's like, "I was too embarrassed." It was like, but you're in Pisa. Like, what is the chance that, that both of you from the same camp in the Berkshires would be in Pisa, Italy on the same day? So she said, "Well, I'll see him this summer and I'll tell him I know where you were on April 7th of last year." So the next time you go someplace, maybe for the first time, just keep in mind that there are probably people that you know who are very nearby to where you are, that you might not ever know that they were there, but they're there. Like, we're all connected.
Awesome.
It's pretty amazing. So, so something I wanted to tell our vast listenership is that when you go to a foreign place, or even if you just want to have an interesting experience locally, you should check out a company called Eat With. You can eatwith.com, and you can search for dining opportunities. And we did this in Sorrento. A friend of mine, a former boss of mine, who's, I guess, sort of a friend, but I haven't seen him since the 80s, but we've been in touch. And I texted with him for the first time in a very long time, and he was in Italy, and he said, "Oh, you should do this." So we did it in Sorrento, and we met up with the nicest family who picked us up at our hotel, brought us to this beautiful house way up on the hills, like near the ridge of the peninsula, the peninsula that Sorrento is on, and had made dinner for us. And we just had the most amazing conversation about what life is like in that part of Italy, and we talked about us, they talked about them, and we felt like we were basically meeting with family. It was like we felt like family.
That's great.
It was really reasonable, cost-wise even. Like, I felt a little guilty because other dinners that I went to were dramatically more expensive. than this was for the five of us, and it was a lot of fun. It was really neat. So, and if you look it up, and you can even find things in your own area, it's actually probably a great way to meet people. Just to, you basically book a meal and you go. It's like an experience, which is so much different from going to a restaurant. Which can be fun too. Like when we were at the Trevi Fountain in Rome, and we kind of wandered down this side street and got pulled into a restaurant and had a really nice meal. But it's different when you're in somebody's house and they've cooked for you, and they talk about the food and them, and it was just really unusual. It was really cool.
That's very cool. What kind of dinner was it? Did they make the whole thing? Did you help them make it, or was
No,
it?
I would have loved to, but they basically sat us down and then they just started bringing food and talking to us about it. And the main lady who was in charge would sit down and eat with us too. But it was it's pasta, a lot, like a lot of like unusual pickled vegetables, and it was all local stuff that they basically probably grew in their garden. I mean, nothing wrong with that. It was delicious.
Very cool. That's
Another
great.
experience that I had was in Rome the night before we left. We were just kind of wandering around the hotel and we found a really authentic gelato place. And because I had talked with a chef in a pizza making class that we did in Florence, he told, and we also made gelato there. This guy basically said, there's a ton of gelato places in Italy. Here's how you know if it's a good one. And there's very specific things. If you go into a place and there's like 100 flavors, that's not good, because that means that it probably was made weeks ago or could have been, bought somewhere. So it's like 15 or less flavors. If it's covered, like if you go in and there's a big mound of gelato in each one, that's not good, because again, it's just like that's just for the sales appeal. And so it needs to be like not mounded, covered, and not highly colored, because if it's colored, then again, they're just trying to sell. So we found this place like right near the hotel that had 10 flavors. It was like pure flavor, just
Mm.
like, and not very expensive. It was really, really good. And then we realized that we were like below where Leah and Stasha's rooms were. So I texted Leah, like, look out your window. And so the window, like 3 floors up, the window opens up. She peeks out, and we're like, we're eating gelato. Come on down. And so they did. And then after that, Tasha and I went to this store across the street, which was just a cheese shop, which I'd never actually been to like a store that just sells cheese. And so it was interesting to see, like we were leaving the next day, so we couldn't buy anything. But then we wandered to the store right next door, and it's just like down a little street in the middle of like basically nowhere in Rome. And we met a guy named Franco Calafati, who's like this internationally known spice expert. And like we wandered into his shop, and it was like wandering into an apothecary shop. Like I didn't, because it's in Italian. I took an Italian class. We both did before we went, but we missed half the classes. Like, I mean, we're decent academics, but we're horrible students, and a lot of stuff happened before so we missed classes. But anyway, so we wandered into this shop, and there's just like walls of shelves. Like if it was a bookstore, they'd be lined with books, but these were all just like canning, like jars, and each one like with a handwritten label on it. And here's this guy. Like I had no idea who he was, and he comes up to us and he reaches into this jar and he's like, "Would you like to try some candied ginger that I just made?" I was like, "Okay." So we tried. So it was like flavorful, like you can't even imagine. Like it was really hot, but really sweet. And then he just starts educating us about how to add spices to things, and like when to use flavored salts. And I think he's somehow connected with Italy, which is like a upscale Italian eatery that you'll find in major cities. I don't know, like I had no idea who he was until I got back to my room, and he gave us this little, like a little card, and said, "Send me an email, and I'll send you a file on how to use spices." And so I did email him, but he hasn't emailed me back yet. But then I'm looking him up, and I'm like, holy crap! Like this is somebody who he runs a spice academy, and somehow Michelle Obama was trying to get him to bring it to America because like that's how. So he's like connected. He knows Oprah, like all these people. So I went back later to just try to get a picture with him, and but it was closed. It's like that was my opportunity, and but that was just kind of cool.
You get him on Padula Rasa as a special guest
Right.
and give us spice
Well,
advice.
well, if he ever emails me back, I'll ask him. But it was sort of like realizing that I had this brush with greatness. Like we're standing there talking with him for like 20 minutes. We had no idea who he was.
So when you were in Italy, how long ago? What was your first visit? Was it 27 years ago or
Oh,
something?
37 years ago, 1985.
So I'm curious, like what your experience of Italy was then versus now. Like, did you do some of the same things? And like,
Yeah.
do you have different reactions to that? Like, what's it like to be in the same place you were 37 years ago? Like, after all
Um,
that time has passed, like, did you notice any differences or?
Couple of things. Pompeii is like significantly more uncovered than it was when I was there before. And I don't really remember making a mental note of it, but I do remember this time walking down and thinking, oh my gosh, like all that is there. Like I didn't know it. I don't remember seeing it. Like there was a main road that they walk you down because you kind of walk from one end to the other, and then there's like all these other things that weren't there before. Also, when I was there before, a lot of the plaster casts of the people who perished they were just out, like in the open, so you could literally touch them.
Mm,
And now they've been displayed behind glass, so everything seemed cleaner somehow than when I was there before. Everything was significantly more expensive than when I was there before. In '85, I went over there. I had $500 in my pocket for 2 weeks, which is a million lira at that time. You could buy a bottle of wine for 70 lira, and it was good. Not anymore. It was much, much, much more expensive. Like they embraced the euro, I think, to their benefit. So that was significantly different. I remember there was a museum in Florence called the Galileo Museum, which actually has the middle finger from his left hand or right hand, I think. I don't remember which. I'll have to look it up. But that's a key. That's like a central feature of that's how they started the museum, because the church was moving his remains after it was decided he wasn't a heretic. This is like goes back to the 1700s, I think. And I thought the story I remembered was that the coffin opened up and some bones fell out. But when you're in the museum, there's actually a little plaque that says bones were removed. So when they were moving him, they stopped the procession, opened it up. They took out a vertebrae. They took out a couple of fingers, a thumb, but they've displayed the middle finger from I think it's his left hand, in a bell jar. And I remember seeing it when I was there 37 years ago, but I also remember seeing like a lot more. I think it seemed like it was bigger to me when I was in the museum. When I was there this time, it was basically 2 floors. It's the same building. It's like a 500-year-old former castle right on the bank of the river. I seem to remember seeing like more astrolabes than they had. They basically just had one big one out and a couple of smaller ones behind glass. So maybe they changed it. But those are a couple of things. We got really lucky with the weather. It was like in the mid 60s or 70s the whole time. And, just beautiful. I mean, staying in Sorrento I had not been there before, but you see Vesuvius kind of that's part of the skyline
cool.
is just, it's just there, which is really neat.
That's awesome. Sounds like a great trip.
Yeah. We've been planning it for 2 decades,
Oh, wow.
I mean, ever since Tosh and I got together, I said, "Oh, we got to go to Italy," and we finally went. So it was good.
I'd like to get to Italy someday. That sounds like such a trip. There would be a lot I would want to see
It
for
is,
sure.
definitely. Um, I would recommend. We went through Perillo, and we did a tour, that like kind of a private tour. So instead of joining a tour, we kind of planned our own, and we had a couple of private guides. So, but I would say, like if it was just you and Stacy, go with a group tour, because you can basically say what you want to do, and like when you do it, like let me know and I'll tell you some things that you should absolutely not miss. Like we missed the Uffizi Gallery in Florence, and I've been there before. Like Botticelli's Springtime is there, which is very famous and had just been restored when I was there before. But there's so many people. Like if you try to go, like we went into the Academy, and we had like a what they call skip the line, to see the David, the
Mm.
the statue of me, and they you know the line to get in there is like it's ridiculously long, but because went through the tour group, just boop, right in, like it's nothing, and nobody says anything, and even though you're just like cutting in front of 1,000 people, but because I didn't remember about the Uffizi Gallery, and I think it's really kind of a thing you shouldn't miss if you go. But so we couldn't get tickets when we were there, like they were booked solid.
When you mentioned that Italy seemed cleaner this time, I had the same impression of London. It was the first time I was in London was in 1986, like right after college.
Yep.
And then we went back as a family. When was it? She's 2014. I'm not, I might have the date wrong. And London seemed like so much cleaner, like so much cleaner, like a place like the Westminster Abbey. Back in the 80s, it was covered with soot.
Yeah.
It's just completely dark. And now it was like a brand new church. It was like all shiny and everything. So everything was like much more posh and shiny. And you could tell like a lot of wealth had come into London. Like
Yeah.
this was pre-Brexit.
Yeah.
So maybe things are worse now. It showed off very well. So,
Yeah.
yeah. And like you're a different person when you come back to a place like that. So that's sort of interesting to kind of compare your memories and who you were back then to who you are now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's something to be said for going back to a place you visited before, I guess is what I'm saying. Like it doesn't always have to be a new destination, which is also fun, but to like say, I want to go back here and revisit some of this.
Yeah. It was interesting for sure. I mean, some things were not as bright as I thought they would be. Like when we went to the Sistine Chapel, it had supposedly been restored, and my memory of it is a lot brighter than what it was when we saw it.
Hmm.
It's like it was dark. And something else that I didn't remember was that when you go into it, you have to not talk. You're not allowed to talk, and you're not allowed to stay there for very long. So they kind of corral you into the middle, and then there's all these guards walking around telling people to be quiet, even though like they're the loudest people in the room, and it's like silencio, silencio. It's like, I didn't say anything. I'm just looking up.
Right. Oh man. So now you're back from Italy,
Yeah.
and anything else going on in Dave's world?
No, I mean, work is pretty constant. I think I had 10 classes with me when I went, which is not that bad. The way that the classes fell, I had to do sort of a minimum amount of grading on Monday of the week that we were there. And we were on a train for 3 hours. Then we had internet. So I was able to get a lot of grading done on the train, which was really kind of cool.
It's great that you can just keep doing your job even while you're
Yeah.
overseas.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
That was amazing. And like I said, I didn't even tell anybody I was going, because what did it matter? I'm still going to be doing my job. I did work in the airport. I did work every day before we went out. It worked out okay.
Well, it's
Yeah.
good to have you back, and I'm glad we could chat about it this month.
Yeah, me
And
too. Me
yeah,
too.
we're probably running a little long in the show, so I wanted to um, jump and share a comment that we got from one of our listeners. We got some feedback from our old friend Jim Morris, who was listening to season 2, episode 2. Okay, so here's what he had to say. He said, just catching up on 2023 episodes. Cool to hear you talk about morning pages. Remember the morning pages conversation we had?
Yes.
It's a
Yes.
journaling style. He says, I've practiced that off and on for maybe 15 years. I heard about Julie Cameron. Thanks for naming her. I couldn't remember her name. So the artist's name who wrote the book about morning pages is Julie Cameron. I heard about Julie Cameron from someone I met at work who was coaching me on being more efficient at work. She quickly caught on that I was not cut out to be an executive and that I was more artistically minded. So she recommended Cameron's The Artist's Way. That's the name of the book, The Artist's Way, which I've not read yet, but I think I might look for it. He says, I've only gone through a few of the exercises, mainly because they start to get pretty intense, requiring more time than I had at the time, but I kept morning pages up for a while and still get into it from time to time. It's probably the closest thing I've ever come to a practice of any sort. And like meditation, I guess one's relationship to it can get complex. I know Julie insists on it being done longhand, but there are several online tools designed around it as well. 750words.com is one I used a lot. So that's 750words.com. So that's Jim's comment. So he's been doing morning pages off and on for quite a while.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Thanks, Jim.
So I don't know what's up for May's show, but we'll figure something out.
Can I invite one of our listeners onto the show right now?
Sure.
Just quickly. Our biggest fan, my mother.
Oh, hey, Mom. How are you?
I'm great. And you?
Yeah, I'm great. I'm really doing well. Thanks for all the comments on listening. Dave always tells me when you've been listening to the show, and
Every time it comes up, I put it on.
Well, we appreciate your support.
Shall I sign in as someone else?
you can. So how long are you in the visit for? Are you?
I'm leaving tomorrow.
Oh, are you all headed back to New Hampshire?
Yes. Yes.
Nice.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm taking her back. I'm going to graduation at Southern New Hampshire.
Been a month. It's enough.
Yeah.
More than enough.
Did you go to Italy too?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yes. He insisted.
Yeah. Well,
I tried to back out and he said, nope, you're coming.
yeah, she did. At some point, like about maybe a month before, she said, I don't think I can make it. I said, you'll be fine.
What was your favorite part of the trip?
Oh, there were so many highlights. It's hard to. Eating dinner in somebody's home was amazing because we had an amazing hostess. Florence was beautiful. Rome was beautiful. Sorrento was beautiful.
Yeah.
It was, but that experience of going to somebody's home and spending time with them was amazing.
Yeah.
I've done it in other countries and it's always the same. It's a highlight.
Yeah.
Well, I'll let you guys talk.
Okay.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
Care.
A cameo from Mom.
I know.
So I guess that'll wrap up this season 5, episode 4. Let us know your thoughts on the episode. You can reach us at padularasa@gmail.com, and we hope you'll become a subscriber at your podcast directory of choice. Hopefully we'll see you back in May, Dave.
Absolutely.